Freedom.
Hey.
Oh my gosh, I hit unmute. It was like, I so much unmuted, you guys, it wasn't even funny. So it's like, oh my god, unmute. I'm like, I totally unmuted, and it didn't click. So anyway.
We're just getting all the gremlins out.
Okay,
Yeah,
you know what?
stream
We're going to
gremlins.
start this over
Let's
again.
go back
Hi,
to
everyone.
Dog.
Welcome to this week's episode of Tales from the Tavern.
Hey. Yeah, perfection.
So we are here with a great group of people, some of whom have been on the stream before, and others who are brand new to coming and hanging out with us. Yeah, I'm really excited about today's group. So I'm going to start by having everybody going around and just introducing us to them and telling us a little about who they are. So BazNBigly, we're going to start with you.
Ooh, all right, straight into the fire. My name is Brad, aka Baz. I'm one half of the BazNBigly dynamic duo, and a forever DM, I suppose. So I think I'm in pretty good company here. I'm hoping to learn what life's like as a player, so that I can live vicariously through your shared experience. There you go. And you can find us everywhere on the internet. BazNBigly. That's BazNBigly, not the word n. Yeah, and me and my wife Steph Bigley do a lot of co-streaming and have a great time.
It's a lot of fun. I've come and hung out in your streams before, so it's been really fun to watch you guys grow your channel. So welcome back. It's nice to have you again. And
Pleasure's mine.
Next we're gonna go over to John.
Oh, yes. I'm John. I'm the GM over at the Action Sturge on Twitch and Twitter, and you can even find us on YouTube if you go to our Twitch page and look at all our social medias. We do like a interactive D&D game over in our channel where viewers can spend points to affect the game and like cast wild magic on people or dole out magic weapons and magic armor and stuff. It gets pretty chaotic. They can even summon monsters, so it gets pretty wild over there.
Awesome.
We do that on Wednesday nights at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time.
Yes. And they do a great job. I know we've rated you guys a couple of times after our stream on Wednesday night. So if you haven't already seen them, then you probably will if you don't check them out on your own. So give them a follow. And next we are going to go to Scott K. Leslie.
All right. Hello, everyone. I'm Scott, and I am the host, storyteller, GM, a whole bunch of things over at the AdventurersPack. We are a bunch of friends sharing what we love on the internet, mostly Dungeons & Dragons, but I've been DMing for 18 years is what I'm going to say. Yeah, thoroughly enjoy it. We also actually have a very similar thing with an audience interactive Friday night show, The Gauntlet, where our challengers go through to defeat every single monster in the official Dungeons & Dragons Monster Manual, with or without the help of the audience. Mostly it's without, as they throw down wheels of chaos and do all sorts of crazy things there as well. But very happy to be here and very excited to be talking one of my favorite hobbies.
Yeah, me too. I'm really glad to get to know you. This has been a great way for me to expand my TTRPG circle. So, I'm excited to have you on and get to hear a little bit more about what you've done and all that good stuff. Casey, we're gonna go over to you next.
Hey yo, I'm Casey Williams, the Adjunct GM. You can find me on Twitch and YouTube at the same name. Twitter at KCT931. I'm going to change that soon, though, to match everything else. But I play TTRPGs on the internet and love to teach people about how to play them themselves. So, great place to come by, and we tried a whole bunch of new systems that we have never played before, and we all learn them together.
That's awesome. You recently did a Witcher stream, didn't you, with the Witcher TTRPG?
We did, and I joked last night. I was talking to some people and said, "Come by for the real grimdark Witcher pen and paper experience." But our campaign was so goofy.
I love it. And last but not least, Tony.
Hi, my name is Tony, and I'm part of the Make It Playable team. We are a Dungeons & Dragons character building podcast and stream. On our podcast, we build characters from superheroes and movie characters. We have 2 series out there, one where we build Avengers characters into D&D characters, and then our other series is Disney princesses into D&D characters. And then every Thursday at 8:30 Pacific time, I'm live on Twitch doing a randomly generated D&D character build, where I go through a spreadsheet that just randomly generates a character, and I try to make sense of it.
That's amazing. I love the sound of that.
Tony, do you get any like interesting requests with the there was that thing on the internet where it's like technically this character is a Disney princess because Disney owns them? Have you ever had any really interesting requests?
I haven't. We've kind of just stuck to the ones that have been recorded as Disney princesses. But we're open to anybody coming on the podcast trying to share who their favorite character is in film or anime or comics or movies and stuff.
That's great.
Yeah.
We know now that you've brought it up, Casey. It's gonna happen.
Yeah, I know it will. Well, I was gonna say somebody in chat just mentioned, Aura Jade just said, I'm gonna need to see the stats on Black Widow.
Oh yeah, Black Widow was honestly one of my favorites because I love rogue bard builds, and
Nice.
She ended up being a rogue bard. It was spectacular build.
Excellent. Well, thank you guys all so much for coming on and hanging out tonight. So I gave everybody fair warning that this question was coming. So whether or not they actually thought about what their answer was going to be, I don't know, but that's their fault, not mine. So earlier this week on Twitter, you may or may not have seen it, I posted a question that somebody asked me, and the question was, what happens if you turn a bag of holding inside out? Now, we can look up what the actual answer is, but the actual answer is boring, so I wanted to know what these fine people thought if they turned a bag of holding inside out. So, by all means, let me know what you think.
Well, obviously, it would open up a portal to the Thingiverse, right?
Yeah, oh yeah, definitely.
There you go.
So there you go. And then you would be inside the bag of holding, and you'd have to find your way out. It'd be a whole session, right?
Yeah.
Oh man, that'd be awesome. Yeah, my first thought was to just have, I don't know if it technically works this way, but it'd be awesome if you just cast a spell into the bag of holding and have it hold there, and then when you turn it out, it casts the spell. So here's your Meteor Storm, or your 9th level Fireball, or your Arcane Gate, or something.
Oh my gosh.
Some player would be putting that on a stick like a net, trying to catch spells.
I guess I'm going to draw from... maybe this is a bit too close to home because I thought of my partner in crime, Bigly, when this happened. And if you turned it inside out, the first thing you see is that really sweet Kate Spade liner.
Yeah.
And then all your money disappears. That's basically that's my experience.
Inside my bag of holding is all of the calendar days where my parties couldn't make a game.
Oh my gosh, I love that.
Now, do you get them back then and
No.
able to send them?
It's like Pandora's box. They're gone.
Oh man, that's awesome.
And I'm gonna say, I think in my headcanon, if you reach into a bag of holding and pull it inside out, I'm gonna say it becomes a bag of devouring, which means if you are crazy enough to stick your arm inside of a bag of devouring, who knows what you might get.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah, some of the answers that I got on Twitter were varied from you get to see that sweet, sweet liner on the inside to, things like suddenly now it's like the bag of holding is holding everything in the planet except for everything that is what is now inside the inside out part. And yeah, I was like, oh man, it was a really, really entertaining question to ask on Twitter. So I hope I get the chance to ask something like that again. So for chat, for those of you who are coming in here for the first time, we love it when you guys participate. This whole conversation is driven by questions from chat. So if you have a question or want to ask anything to any of the people that are here on the panel, just drop your question in chat. And moderator will make sure that I get it, and we'll get to talk about it and discuss it. Hopefully we'll have time for all the questions that we get today. And let's see. And we also have channel point redemption for Ask My Question Next. For 1,000 channel points, we will boost your question up to the next one in the queue. There's 3 of those available every night. So if you are very anxious to ask your question, and there's been a whole bunch of questions asked before yours, you can use that, and we will boost your question up to the next one asked. So there you go. Fork Bus, I'm going to have to go get the drawing board for this one. All right, so Bat Duck has a great question. What is the design of the best villain?
Ooh. Immediately, I have to answer that question with a question. Is it like a villain that we or has been designed, or like the best elements of good villain design?
I know, Bat Duck,
guess...
if you'd like to clarify, go ahead, but I'm going to go with either one is fine, so...
Since I'm that guy, I'll go ahead and just
he says yes, so I think he doesn't really care which one.
The best way to answer a question that answers a question, which is a terrible thing to do, so I apologize in advance. For me, I think it's really story. When I'm creating villains, it's important for me that a villain feels lived in. So rather than something that's kind of rolled ad hoc, which is great in a pinch, I think it's important that the villains also have their own story, their own motivations, and their own histories as well. That just really helps weave them into the story thus far a little bit more richly. The other thing that I always stress to when DMs or GMs are creating villains or bads or anti-heroes is that every villain thinks that they're the good guy, their own story, right? Or the good person, their own story. So it becomes a lot more interesting when you play a villain that really believes that what they're doing is in someone's best interest, even if it's their own. Sometimes, of course, you can argue that there are bad, villains who are just like crazy and they don't care about that stuff. But it's I just find it interesting to play in those nuances that make villains, conscious, free-thinking, and willed individuals as well.
One thing that I've always loved in a good villain is that they aren't that there's a method to it, and that they have a set of rules that even if they don't realize they follow, they do. Someone brought up in conversation the other day the cartoon Shaolin Showdown. I don't know if anyone remembers that. And I remembered how good of a villain Chase Young was in that, because he had a code that he followed, like a set of rules, that this is who I am. And even though he was a villain, they were strictly followed. And I always find that to be an interesting villain.
Would that be like lawful evil?
Sure.
Yeah.
I think another incredibly important thing to add is knowing what your villain wants. Because if you just make a villain like, this is a bad guy and wants to do bad things, the more detailed you can design the want of what they are trying to get, then that alone influences actions they're going to take, reactions to things that your players are going to do, as long as it is based on knowing what their goal is.
I'm a sucker for the villain that the players don't know is a villain until they already trust them and like them. Mm-hmm. And I do that so often, where it's like, this friendly tavern keeper that you guys have come to really like. Boom! Shao Tucker episode of Full Metal Alchemist. Now we hate him.
You open with, you all meet in a tavern, and 30 episodes later, but you never knew that one tavern keep. That was the guy from the very beginning.
But you sold me my house.
Usually when I build out my villain characters, I tend to use the player rules, and so I go through all of the player motivations, the personality types. I give them a backstory, and then I really try to think of what turned them into a way to want to pursue their own goals that are not the goals of the rest of the world. Because again, what Baz said is like, they think that they are the good guys in this instance. They don't see themselves as evil, but the rest of the world sees themselves as evil. So I try to find that turning point for my villains, like what clicked in their mind that said, yeah, I'm gonna take the reins of this world and try to do my own thing.
My favorite villains are the ones that the players decide are the villains. Like they meet them in the course of like whatever that character's or that NPC's motivations or activities are, and then they decide that is the guy that they're going to go after. Like I've had a lot of really good villains who were just kind of almost like throwaway NPCs who for some reason the characters just like really there was a bad fight that left them wounded. Maybe they didn't win, and then they were like, okay, that's the guy we're going after, no matter what. And then I just get to play off of that and start sprinkling more stuff into a campaign.
As a caveat to this question, is there a villain in any of the published adventures that anyone really likes? I love the Growlhuns in Dragon Heist, and that brings up kind of another thing. I think every once in a while it's good to have a villain that's just satisfying to beat. And I love in Dragon Heist, I've played it a few times, and it's always so satisfying to kind of stick it to the two rich folks in town that think they can get away with everything.
I really like the cast lanterns in Dragon Heist. I think they have a really compelling story.
Wait, that's what I meant.
Oh, okay, yeah. So,
the earlier one.
Those are my favorite too.
Yeah, cast lanterns. They are so, because their story is so interesting, and like the reasons why they're doing things are pretty complex.
It makes the players have to make a choice. Like, do you give in, or do you feel sorry for them, or do you say no? This line does not be crossed at all.
I had a party that was dead set. They took down the castle lanterns, but they're like, Casey, you need to get the Avernus book and tool it. We're going and we're getting those kids. And it was a great campaign.
Yeah, the campaign we were playing it with, we had a party of kind of evil mercenaries who were just in it for the gold anyway, but they sort of branched from their alignment to save those kids.
One of the things that John mentioned actually is similar to the villains that your players decide. There are also the villains that your players create. I love those too, when there's an NPC interaction and your players just do something to them or around them, and then you kind of put that in your back pocket. You're like, okay, that's gonna come back. Yeah. And I've had NPCs who become like red herrings or even small nuisances, and NPCs who've become completely end game arc villains.
I'm just waiting for the next Avatar series where the Cabbage Man is
When that TTRPG comes out, that's the ultimate BBEG.
That's funny.
On that note, it's also so incredibly satisfying when you get one of your players' backstories and they've included a knife in their backstory that you can look at and go, this works so perfectly with this villain, whether or not it's the BBG or it's a right-hand man or one of the underlings, but being able to then weave your player's backstory into the overarch of the story, it feels so good.
That's awesome.
That's a wrap on villains.
All right,
villains
done. Check. Moving right along.
We just wrote the de facto
there you go.
Guy. There you go.
All right, so Forkpuff would like to know. Hi, Forkpuff. Forkpuff would like to know, what is a TTRPG that you found and you plan to play next?
I have an answer that is also a plug.
Go for it.
We're getting ready. I'm really excited to try Pokemon Tabletop United. I'm going to be using that for a charity stream coming up, and I'm super excited about it. We were going to do Pokemon 5e from Joe the DM, but it got the cease and desist, so we're retooling right now towards Pokemon Tabletop United, which does admittedly look amazing.
Wow, it's kind of a badge of honor in a way, but that's wow. They must have been,
so many good
podcasts.
Casey, I was looking through your stuff. You play a lot of different games, don't you? Like you
Yeah.
play what's just in that vein while I have you, like what's been your favorite so far that you've played, like of like the not D&D kind of?
It really kind of just depends on what I'm going for at the time and who I'm playing with. Probably the most like versatile in like I can throw a game together pretty quickly and have as many players or as few as I want. Kids on Bikes is a fantastic game to use for a one shot with anybody, and I've used it playing with young people and older people and people of various experiences. It's super easy to pick up and have a good time with.
I've totally had that one in my back pocket for a while. I've been kind of dying to play that.
It's super fun.
I'm definitely gonna try to play Blades in the Dark.
Oh, I would like to try that sometime.
Soon. Yeah.
I'm also playing Scion right now off stream with some friends, which is a White Wolf game where you play. It's kind of like Neil Gaiman's American Gods, where you play like demigods in the modern age. And I've been having a lot of fun with my character, who's a son of Tyr.
Sorry, I forgot that Nintendo owns that franchise now, so that makes sense. That you would get a cease and desist before the idea has even come to fruition.
Yeah.
We were about to put out the first 5 episodes of a podcast, and like I was editing, and I saw the news, and I was like, "Well, table flip."
Yeah.
Yeah. Now you should just do Cyberpunk because CDPR will never get to it now. They've got way too many other things.
Yeah, there you go.
I'm way excited to play Cyberpunk. I haven't
Their
had a
lawyers are
chance
busy.
to yet.
They won't touch you.
Yeah, I haven't gotten to play it either.
It looks so good.
The
I haven't got a chance to
TTRPG
play it
is,
yet. And there's so many good streams out there that are already playing it. There's the one with Cypher of Tyr and Mustang Art and all those folks. That's amazing. The guy from the How to Drink YouTube channel has a really good stream of it called Lo-Fi High Tech.
Oh, that's cool.
But,
oh, did somebody else have one? I didn't want to stop.
Well, ultimately, the list is endless. Like, there's so many games I want to play.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's so.
I'm
Cool.
definitely
time.
looking at Blades in the Dark as our next one.
I've kickstarted a few that I can't wait to get my hands on. Zweihander is doing this Flames of Freedom game, which is like Zweihander during the American Revolution.
Oh.
Super excited about that. It's like Hamilton meets Grimdark. And then, of course, the One Ring 2nd edition.
Yeah, I
in the
saw
fall.
that one. I am looking forward. So I kickstarted Inspiriles, which I got to finally playtest recently, which is really cool. If you guys haven't seen that one, I definitely recommend giving it a look. It's designed for like early teenagers, but really anybody. It's accessible to anybody. And the thing that's really awesome about it is that you have to learn and use sign language in order to play it, which I think is awesome. So like when you introduce your character, you have to learn the sign language letters for how to spell your character's name and that sort of thing. And it's being released both in American Sign Language and British Sign Language, which I think is really cool.
And the art for that book is some of the most gorgeous.
Yeah.
I interviewed some of the people behind that on my channel a while back, and it was one of the best experiences.
Yeah.
Fantastic books.
I've had Rich on Tales before, and he's just such like
He's a
the
delight.
nicest guy.
Mhm. And I hope you're watching, Rich, because I'll talk good about you and your game all day.
Right?
I did not get to kickstart that one because I was really broke at the time, but I cannot wait to throw money at that project.
Yeah, very cool. And then there's another one that I managed to pick up. So Bad Duck in Chat has been really pushing for me to try DMing a game, which I admittedly have never DM'd. And I managed to pick one up in the itch.io bundle, the bundle for racial justice and equality, back like last summer or something like that. And it was yes, I said I would. And it's called Knights of the Kitchen, and it looks hilarious. And I was like, that might be the one we have to do. So,
anyone find anything they're particularly excited about in one of those bundles? I picked one up, and there were just several things that Yokai Hunter Society was one I'm really wanting to try from a couple of those bundles.
That bundle that Luna's talking about, I got it too. Like, there's so much in it.
So much in it.
Oh my gosh.
There's a lot of solo TTRPGs in there that I'm kind of like, like that was really the first time I'd taken a look at any solo ones, so I might be venturing into some of those on my own channel sometime just to try them out.
I've never done a solo, but I want to. Ironsworn looks cool.
Yes, yeah, I've heard good things about that one.
See, I used to play everything I could get my hands on back in the 80s, but lately, I think just for time alone, I've been pretty much strictly D&D, not for any other reason than, you know, I might run 1 or 2 campaigns and that's it, and that's just what my players wanted to play. But I've really had a keen eye on the Star Wars system for Fantasy Flight, and Edge of the Empire, I think is that what it's called, if I'm not mistaken. But I've always wanted to try Dungeon Crawl Classics and Shadowrunner too, that were pretty popular, and Call of Cthulhu. I've always wanted to play in a Call of Cthulhu game, and
It's
I've
very
never
fun.
had the opportunity to do it. So, or just actually play anything. I love DMing, but I just want to play anything. I just never really.
Forever
had the
DM.
chance, not in the last 6 years.
I like with Call of Cthulhu, I'll go to the SCP writers website and pick a random SCP and make a Call of Cthulhu one-shot out of it. And have
That's
done
an
some really
excellent
cool stuff
resource.
with that. Yeah, it's super good for inspiration. Luna, I actually had a question about, given recent experience with Star Wars for shared experience.
Yeah.
I've been wanting to pick up the Fantasy Flight Star Wars game. Which book do you start with?
So the group that is on our channel is using Edge of the Empire.
Okay.
I don't know if there's one. I don't know enough about it to honestly know if there's one that you're supposed to start with, but that's what they're using, and most of the group is totally new to the system. Only one of the people that's in the stream has been playing it, has played it before. So it seems like and I see Wolfsblood in chat, so Wolfsblood, correct me if I'm wrong, but it seems like they've had a fairly easy time picking it up. You know, the dice obviously are completely different. They're not numbered. They're, you know, you roll a success or a failure or a triumph or whatever. So
I think that's why they haven't really, like, FFG hasn't said, like, you should get this, or Force and Destiny, or Age of Rebellion, so I was really super unsure where to start.
yeah. Yeah, that's... I don't know if anybody else has anything they want to add, but... All right, Vertrux Nightblood used one of the Ask My Question Next, so we're going to jump ahead to that one, and then we'll come back. We have 2 of those to get to next, and then we'll jump back to some of the other questions that have been asked. What are some of the inside jokes from a game that you run or play and the story behind it?
Oh, okay. I've got a good story for this one. So, way back when I was running a World of Darkness campaign, which is, I forget where they are now, but it was a White Wolf Publishing, kind of the bare bones version of Vampire the Masquerade, which is, in Vampire you play vampires, in World of Darkness you are humans being introduced to the world behind the curtain of monsters and whatnot. And my group was going on this very long adventure, and they were, it takes place modern day, driving down from town to town, and they turned to me and said, hey, we want to stop in the next town. Took me by surprise. I had no idea why, but I said, sure. So here I am suddenly having to populate a town. Like, okay, well, there's fast food joints, there's these stores, and in particular, like, here's a rug shop. There's going to be a shop that sells rugs. And one of the players got fascinated with this rug shop. So she goes in, she's like, I want to see what's inside the rug shop. I'm like, okay, fine. And I start describing these rugs, and one of them was an intricate purple one. And she's like, tell me more about this purple rug. Okay, fine. And she ends up buying this rug, and they take it with them. The whole story continues, and at the end, we have the finale. She turns to me and says, Scott, what about the rug? Why? What was it? And I said, you wanted to stop. There was nothing about this. You wanted to stop, and there was a rug shop. End of story. And so now it is the running gag at my table that if there is something that is just there, it's not necessarily important for the plot. It is a rug shop.
I love that. I had a similar, because the best moments are always those of little consequence. We came down from a big like climactic moment in a game about a year and a half ago, and we had to take a long break from the game because the GM deployed. But in one of those late games, my rogue was just like wandering around. He's like, "You come across this old lady selling macarons." I was like, "Cool. I'm just gonna give her 100 gold to get her business going because she just has this little cart." And now, like every once in a while, now I hear about how I am apparently the franchise or the primary investor in this old lady's macaron empire now.
Oh
I
boy,
love
look at you
that.
starting up the economy.
Gotta spend that stimmy somewhere in local business.
We've had a couple. One of our best is there in our main campaign, the gold with they call themselves the Golden Company. There's they have like a very charismatic leader who kind of like wheels and deals and he does most of the talking. But one of the other characters is a very big lizard person death cleric, and it's always been a joke that her like social skills are like completely the inverse of him. But she always tries to like take after him. So she'll adopt his like key phrases like would you like to schedule a meeting, or and just like apply those inappropriately like wherever or stuff like that. But there was a moment where they thought that the leader had died, and then like immediately she like looks up and she's like, "I'm not ready to be the leader yet," and like everybody like just busted out laughing. So now like when stuff goes wrong, like that's usually a common response to something bad happening.
With our Witcher campaign, I don't know if anyone's familiar with the Witcher pen and paper RPG, but spellcasters' abilities are divided into spells, curses, and hexes. And the hexes have long-lasting effects with ridiculous ways to get rid of them. One of the first ones you get introduced to is the Eternal Itch, which does exactly what it sounds like it does. And the only way to get rid of it is, we determined, one, you have to apologize to all your former lovers, and then under a full moon, drink a beverage made with fool's parsley. So the spellcaster, every town they went to, bought up all the fool's parsley just in case.
Oh, that's evil. I love it.
That's fantastic.
I think what stuck out for me there is you said pen and paper, and I was like, if you're playing TTRPGs with pen, that's some kind of chaotic leaning. That's gonna,
Right?
I don't know if it's chaotic, evil, neutral, or good, but it's definitely on the chaotic side of the spectrum. I think for we have a lot because my home game is we're a bunch of theater friends. I'm performing artists, so there's like a lot of like inside jokes, I guess, that happen in our real lives that kind of feature from time to time. But one that stands out for me among them is just this. I think I've made one of my players so paranoid. I take rest pretty seriously. So if you're resting at a tavern or if you're resting on the road, there are all kinds of hazards that exist when you decide to do that, right? So they've learned to keep watch and things like that. One of my players has 2 bear traps, and he's a caster. He's always a caster class, so he can't carry anything else because he insists on carrying these large iron bear traps with him. And even when they're in the tavern, he'll like lay them out in front of the door and one in front of the window, and he carries them around with him in spite of carrying anything else, because I won't let him take any other loot, gear, anything they pick up, because I'm like, you're completely commandeered by these 2 bear traps. But he won't leave them alone because he's terrified that I'm gonna, I guess now that hearing it myself say it, do something to him in his sleep. So take that for what you will, but it's always a pretty good laugh.
Sounds like he needs that bag of holding to be able to turn inside out and move bear traps.
Yeah, that's right.
So when does the evil mage turn them into awakened bear traps and just go after him in the next morning?
That's just the Pokemon Stunfisk.
I hope he's not watching this because now he's going to be a step ahead of me. That's my worst nightmare.
My players have become have an aversion to barrels because of one instance that happened between a couple of the characters. So what? Just a backstory on one of our characters. He's a monstrous race and trying to overcome his monstrous past, and so he gets into like hallucinations, and then kind of like goes on a rampage sometimes at night. And a couple of the players caught him in an alley with 2 dead bodies, and they didn't know what to do with the 2 dead bodies. So they decided that they're going to stick both of the bodies into the only single barrel that was in the alleyway. And so now every time a barrel is brought up, they're like, no, don't check the barrels. We want nothing to do with barrels. So
player logic and player fear are very rarely working together.
This is true.
yeah.
Oh my gosh. We had so in a previous game that I had been in that was streamed, there was a character, this little NPC goblin who had been exiled from his clan. And so somehow the party managed to befriend this lone goblin. And it developed the hashtag from our chat. It developed the hashtag Squee for Prez because, 1, we were building up to a presidential election, and 2, the audience just loved him, like just thought he was the best character ever. And so, every now and then it'll still pop up, in various streams. We'll see hashtag Squee for Prez. So, that was a good one. And then another one actually came from this stream. So not from a game, but in one of the earlier streams when we were on a different channel, somebody had asked, we were talking about something anyway. We had to go to break and, and we said something about going to use the bathroom, and somebody that was in the group said that they were going to go hashtag free the pee. And that sort of stuck with it. And so now every time we go to break, there's a few people in chat who will throw up hashtag FTP, and that's what that stands for. So now you know.
That's awesome.
So on occasion, I should clarify too, you'll see hashtag FTWE, which is hashtag free the water elemental. So that came from a question that happened a few weeks ago, which was, can you drink a water elemental? And so that
pee it out.
That's what we were saying. So anyway, it was a very interesting conversation. It always devolves into chaos when that question comes up, but it was very funny. So every so often somebody will throw in a hashtag FTWE.
I thought that would be for those 12-hour streams.
Yeah, right? Oh my gosh. Casey, I just saw your question in chat. Is a water elemental wet? Yeah.
I want to get into that in word.
Right?
Casey's going to start spending that channel clout to bump all his own questions.
Right? I know.
I have the points.
That's right.
All right. So let's see. So the other question that got bumped up was from Zealzaddy, which I think this is a good one actually. Do you adjust your campaigns to your campaign's feel to match the current real world zeitgeist?
I'm more kind of use or have a barometer of that or thing of what in the current things do I not want to include in the game, because that can be uncomfortable for some people sometimes, and it kind of becomes one of those safety tools conversations at some point. If something traumatic happens in the real world that involves a person, I don't really want them to have to live that moment or think about that moment in a game. We had a moment in a game at our local game store a long time ago, where like I had this big moment planned that involved like kind of like an invasion of the party's favorite business, and then something happened where a local business had a rather violent incident, and I was like, okay, we're not doing that. That's a little too real right now.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that would be kind of like the opposite, or the inverse of that, right? So
Yeah.
you didn't do something because something kind of happened.
I tend to be on the same side of that fence. I think we protect this pretty vehemently at my tables. When people are there to roll dice, oftentimes it's a much needed and sometimes the only escape we have from what we're all kind of traversing in our real lives, whatever the case may be. So I actually have a very specific rule that things like that don't feature in the game, and we have like a table agreement in my games that we don't like bring things in and reference particularly Politico, hot button topics, soapboxing, things like that too. So I would say specifically we work to try and avoid that from the fantasy environment and really focus on like the nuance of the dream state that we're looking to create here that gives us a chance to pull away from that kind of stuff usually.
Yeah, agreed. I mean, we come into people play games for all sorts of different reasons. Tables that are playing to have the best numbers and break characters and do an awesome dungeon crawl, or people who are coming to escape into a whole different reality. But I think no matter what, it is important to ensure that the space that you're playing that in is safe for everyone. And I would say that the adjustments that we do for as far as the modern zeitgeist is concerned is looking at it and going, how are we as people growing and changing, and what things are maybe outdated and don't belong here anymore. But I don't, unless I'm playing a modern setting game, I don't look to the modern world and go, here's an event. But if I'm playing a game, maybe not necessarily D&D, but a modern setting, looking for inspiration, but not necessarily looking for exact events, because a lot of things are tied to that you might not know about.
I do use history for game inspiration, but more like that's kind of a product of me being a literary like student and like specializing in particularly I focus in early English literature. So I'll pull from this random poem from Sweden or something like that. But that's kind of a different draw from the real world.
Yeah, and in that sense, I guess it depends on the setting of the campaign, right? Like if you are playing in like a very corporate kind of like, you can definitely draw inspiration from current events, I guess. But I guess you have to be careful about it. I've never been really in that situation, so I can't speak to it too much.
It's a really good question though, Zeal, and I think Casey, I believe you're the one that mentioned it almost borders on with this realm of safety and safe tools and safe spaces. Yeah. I think either way, whether you're going to do it or you're actively going to not do it, that is something that needs to be a session zero conversation, because you don't want to, as a GM, create a situation that could be a potential trigger for someone, especially when there are so many like in your face and obvious current world triggers. I think that's really key, and we have to look at this. We have to look at the gray in it, right? It can't be like absolutely no, never anything modern, or absolutely yes, I always draw modern. There has to be gray area there. But it's something that needs to be discussed as well, and vice versa. If I was a player in a game, and for me it is this great and much needed escape, and then somebody brings up something that's like a social hot button topic in Waterdeep, and I'm like, okay, dude, that literally happened on the news yesterday, and then that's going to pull me out of it too, and that's going to affect my experience and who knows who else at the table, right?
I agree.
Me as well. Yeah.
I don't really have anything more to add on to it. I think you said it pretty perfectly, actually. For me, And actually, Apache 1222 said it in chat as well. I play games to have fun and get away from the world. I don't need the world to come into my game. We're all surrounded with it every day in various ways, shapes, and forms that I think a lot of us get into TTRPGs and gaming and, and other hobbies too. Books and, forging and knitting and art and anything really, to get away from some of that stuff, because if it's a constant bombardment of what's happening in the world, you're gonna go crazy.
Yeah, that's a good. I won't belabor this, but to your point, actually, Luna, I've been playing a lot of like GTA 5 roleplay, and we have a really great server and an awesome community, and that's something that we tackle even there as well. So you're right. I don't think it's just TTRPG specific, or I think it's anywhere you have a community that comes together for a mutual kind of agreement. It's not a democracy; it's a private experience, and I think those things need to be clearly spelled out, because we have a similar rule there, where like you can't bring things into the city that are hot button social topics, because I don't want to, I'm probably just turned off the TV to not hear about that. So it's like anywhere you have that kind of social contract, I guess.
Yeah. Zeal Zaddy just brought up a sort of a follow-up to his question, and he says, I avoid it too, but I do see things worked in local game store games. For me, the exception is conceptual inspiration for the modern day, like a spy game or something. So, yeah.
I think we're talking about like a system inspiration. Sorry.
Yeah.
I think the closest I've come to something like that was in one game. It was like one of those like fast forward time hops in the second. Like we did a campaign and then like did a second one like 75 years later to show the consequences of the actions of the previous party. And due to their things, one country in the world of the game had become hyper what we would call libertarian in the real world, and then of course players were drawing, like I had to research that in kind of this like hyper industrial, and that kind of necessitated in order to accurately kind of understand it. But even then, that's kind of just pulling from like an abstract idea or philosophy to incorporate it into a fictional place. It wasn't necessarily like, let's replace a real person's name with fantasy name.
Yeah, and then there are conceptual inspirations too that I think are fine and fair, right? Like you might have, one of your big bads might be very dictator-esque, but it doesn't necessarily mean you're drawing that from something that everybody is, overfed on at the time, or there might be a particular societal issue in your world that residents are rising up against. And I think those types of concepts are great to draw inspiration from. We have to be very careful about how thin the veneer is, right? Like, if you just swap the first two letters of a person's first and last name, then it might be too much of a pull. But if it's kind of the idea of what that conflict is, then you can probably get away with it a bit easier.
Yeah, and I guess like just how you're using it too. Like if you're there to like prove a point or push a certain agenda of some sort, then obviously that's But if you're just drawing inspiration from it, I think that's where you should be, right?
Some of the worst horror story. Oh, sorry.
I was just going to say that we all draw inspiration from everything that we see within the world, whether it's fantasy or fictional, or whether it's non-fictional, real-world events. So a lot of that is going to creep up in everything that we do in our TTRPG. But it's just, exactly what you said. How thin is that veil going to be? And we have to talk to our players about what they're comfortable with.
Mm-hmm. That's a good point. I know I sat at a table a while back, virtual table. Thanks, modern day. But speaking of modern day influences,
right. Thanks, COVID.
But we had worked out this whole thing and of the world where it was going to involve this like illicit substance being traded by the bad guys. And one player at the table, no names of course, and this was a while ago, but was like, I have some addiction problems and I would really like it if we not include drugs as a main theme of this game. And I was like, done. Like, we will not be doing that because that is not cool.
That's awesome too that you could have that that open communication with your players as well. I think that's really important. to have.
I also like your point, Casey, where if you are going to go there, to make sure it's well researched, because then it can become a learning experience too. And we do, just like we can bring these things into the table experience, we also take things away from the table experience, right? So I think that's admirable that you know, if you're going to go there, you go into the research and make sure that at least where it needs to be accurate, it is accurate.
I think there's a really interesting supplement that was put out by Take This. I don't know if any of you are familiar with Take This, but they are basically they're a nonprofit here in the U.S. that does a lot of work around gaming and mental health. And, you know, they tend to go to a lot of big conventions. I know they go to all the PAX conventions, at least the ones here in the U.S. I don't think they go to Australia. But they run something called an AFK room, which is basically like a quiet room, a place for people to get away from the hustle and bustle of the show floor and the people, and they have licensed therapists on hand and volunteers that are there, and information about mental health and that sort of thing. But about a year and a half ago, maybe close to 2 years ago now, they actually released a supplement, a 5e supplement, that is based on a woman sort of having a break with reality. Like, she essentially goes into a coma, and so the party has to go in through the help of a new class that they created called a psychomancer. They basically have to go into what ultimately is like going into her dreamscape and kind of rescue her. And the enemies that they're kind of rescuing her from are basically, when you really break it down, it's depression and anxiety. But they use, you know, like an Aarakocra, and they use like a bunch of different ways of outlining it that way. And so going back to your moment about how it can really be a teachable moment, if you're somebody who is comfortable in that realm of, you know, educating about mental health, or, you know, maybe you are somebody who uses TTRPGs in a mental health setting, that can be a great way to illustrate a point without it necessarily being like, this is a mental health game, you know. You know, it's still very D&D. You know, I bought it and I've read through it several times and ran it actually in a text-based scenario with a group one time. And it wasn't until like they really started putting 2 and 2 together that they were like, oh yeah, like I really did learn something about depression or anxiety, or, you know, something along those lines. Because that's the field that I am in my day-to-day life, is, you know, mental health and social work. So,
I think I would be a little hesitant to run something like that myself, just due to not understanding the background enough. But that is amazing, and I'd love to sit with someone who does have the tools to fully understand that.
Yeah.
Well, I'd be interested to see too, like if the adventure is written in a way to help even the GM
That's
sort
a good
of
point.
learn or get an insight into like the mindset, I guess.
Yeah, kind of. This
Yeah.
is what it feels like, or this is
Right.
yeah.
I wonder if that could be used as like a psychology session or something, or, you know, from as students, you know.
Oh, interesting.
I think it would be a really smart thing to do, especially because there's a lot more about gaming and TTRPG gaming, especially as a resource for mental health, for kids and young adults who may have like social anxiety, or kids who are on the autism spectrum who don't interact with people the same way that somebody who isn't, you know, on the spectrum may interact with people. There's a lot more research out there around it, a lot more people who do it. There's a lot of teachers who use it as like a social skill building for their students. It's really fascinating stuff, and there's a lot of resources out there once you start really looking.
Casey, I was just wondering if you had ever used it in your classroom. Any TTRPGs?
I don't necessarily get as much freedom to do things like that as I would like at the moment, just because I mostly teach intro, like freshman level English classes. But it's something I'm trying to tool how to do in a productive way for my classes in once I have in-person classes again. And in particular, I was thinking about next semester having the students make a character in a game. Not necessarily that we would play a game, but to think about like characterization in a novel or a short story or whatever by building a character and doing like similar pre-work that we would think of to designing a character backstory to better understand. Specifically, like, oh, we just read, I don't know, we read 1984. I'd like you to build Winston as a character in Call of Cthulhu or something.
Yeah, that would be really cool. I really like that idea.
All right. Well, we are probably at a great spot to take a quick break. We're just about an hour in, so I think we can take a pause and let our guests refill their drinks and all of that stuff. So we're going to do that, and we'll be back in like 5 to 10 minutes, and we will see you all when we come back, and we'll get to the rest of the questions.
Yeah.
Mario and the
love-hate
Goon Squad
relationship.
gonna show up at your ass.
And we're back. And I remembered to unmute myself today. So, you know, I only muted myself once today. That's a good start, right? So we are back from break. Fork Puff, I dropped a message in chat. I don't know if it got buried in there. I was not able to find the link that you asked for right away, but I will take a look for it again after the stream, and I will drop it in our Discord so you can take a look at it. Bees! All right, we have a bunch more questions to get to, so we're going to dive right back in. Let's see. This is a great one for right after break. Jim the Dim would like to know, what would your favorite PC or NPC think of candy corn?
My favorite PC will try anything once. But probably wouldn't care for it.
I will take full blame for this one, by the way, because of something that I said in a Discord server the other day, so this is my fault.
I love candy corn, so I'll just say that most of my PCs will love candy corn as well.
Big
They
same.
have two.
I think it could be one of those things that spawns a big bad evil that we talked about earlier. So yeah, I think there would definitely
candy
be some
corn
candy
mimic.
corn themed. Yeah. Now this might also break my rule about not bringing in real world, challenges, because you could argue that candy corn is very much a social pariah.
We don't talk about pizza toppings in our games.
True
Pineapple
story.
is mandatory. Mandatory in my world.
In the Guild Wars 2 game around Halloween, I don't know if any of you guys have ever played Guild Wars 2, there will be like candy corn, I can't remember what they call them, but basically like enemies that look like candy corns, or like potions you can drink that will turn you into like a miniature candy corn monster guy. It's pretty entertaining.
Oh, it's fantastic. I love doing special things around the holiday seasons. I think that my favorite NPC is going to see candy corn as, though he may not necessarily like it, it is plentiful, and if marketed correctly, could net him a good amount of money.
There you go.
There's a bard at work there for sure. Somewhere.
Yeah, I think any of my PCs will just try to figure out how to weaponize it.
My dear Bard Calico Jack would love the colors, and then be rather disappointed that the taste doesn't match, or isn't as bright and colorful as the candy appears.
Taking the subject of relating a real-world object's flavor to something in-game, one thing that became canon in one of our sessions is, I don't know if any of you are familiar with the cotton candy grapes.
Yes.
Oh, so we've decided that cotton candy grapes, that is the official flavor of good berries now. So,
Nice.
And we have access to them, in the proper season, so we always have a bowl of them at the game when we can.
That's great.
It's the best flavor to bring in.
That makes perfect sense to me that cotton grapes are good berries.
I just
Yeah,
love that
that's
concept.
just canon now.
And
Someone
it's
call
canon.
it Perkins.
Right?
Yeah, it
I'm here for
immediately gives you like a point of immersion too. Jokes aside, like immediately you certain things like that, little things like that. It's like you can say, okay, I can imagine that, and I guarantee you, every player around your table next time
Right.
good beers come up, they're gonna like
Taste
you know,
them.
have to
manufacture that flavor, right?
Yep.
Like every elven liqueur I think I've ever had in a bar tastes like some kind of like cognac or scotch or something like that. 'Cause
Yeah.
I know that's a reference that at least some of my players will get, right? Like I just said, they're theater people. They will all get any booze reference I make. So that's usually the
What? Theater
common
people drink?
denominator. Yeah.
For shame.
Have any of you done any work from the Heroes Feast? Have any of you cooked any of the recipes from that book that came
I
out?
have not, but it is totally on my to-do list. My copy of my book is sitting like within arm's reach. It's right there.
I made the potatoes. They were very good. I don't remember the name of it in there, but it was just a fried potato dish.
Yeah,
It was very good.
I don't know if it was from that, but my wife had pulled up a recipe for Adventurers casserole and had made that. I don't know if that was from that, but it was definitely like a D&D themed dish. It was pretty good. It was like a breakfast casserole. It was very good.
Are y'all cook for D&D night type people, or is it more like snack?
We used to have we used to make it like a big thing on Saturday night in a home game way back when, one of the earlier 5e ones we started playing, and we always had some kind of food element. We actually had to tone it back because it was a bit of a potluck, and we spent like in a 3-hour session we spent like an hour and a half eating. But we would do things like people bring like dragon wings or like a flare tenders.
Oh,
Like,
nice.
Just stuff like just make stuff and name it themes. We used to do that.
Oh yeah,
it's always
chat
fun.
just mentioned a guy on TikTok person on TikTok who goes by Quincy's Tavern, and
Oh, my
I've
gosh,
seen
yeah.
some of those videos and they look really cool.
They
Nice.
look amazing, and also he just comes across as the nicest guy. If you
Right?
ever feel bad, watch a Quincy's Tavern TikTok, and you'll just feel better.
It's true. It's
some
so true.
free therapy right there.
I'm gonna shout out Jim the Dim for a second. Jim occasionally will do cooking streams. Jim has worked as a chef before, and so we'll occasionally do cooking streams that he calls D&D and dinner. And so a couple of times he's done stuff from the Heroes Cookbook, and then also partners it with like a themed discussion for the night. So one night he was cooking something, and then the conversation for the night was like character building or something like that. So that's always a lot of fun when he does those.
That's amazing. That's something I've wanted to do. I've worked as a cook, and I love cooking, and I'm also like the group bartender.
Yeah.
At game groups I play in, where everyone's
And
like, "Hey,
DM?
make such and such." Yeah,
Okay, just send me directions.
Yeah, all right.
I'm going. I don't care.
I
I don't
contain
care what the
multitudes.
border says.
I mean, I've heard of dinner theater, but like dinner D&D is
I dumped all my stuff into skill proficiencies.
Someone's
But,
got to do it.
Right.
But I've always wanted to do streams like that, but I just haven't figured out the camera setup. One day.
Mm-hmm.
It's very
It's always so nice to be able to do something aside from streaming a game, which, don't get me wrong, I love, and I love seeing all these people doing them, but it's nice to see something still nerdy associated, but then also be able to talk D&D at the same time.
Yes.
Just the variety. I mean, the variety is the spice of life, and having it in all things, Twitch included, is fantastic.
Speaking of drinks and such, and to that end, this kind of goes off the candy corn question. For a favorite PC or NPC, what would their favorite drink be?
At the risk of sounding tropey, I definitely have the same Shadowmancer sorcerer with the bear traps. He says that all he drinks are the tears of his enemies. It's kind of standard, but it's
So
who
lightly
says
salt
it to.
water,
He'll say it to
huh?
anyone. Yeah, and I don't. I guess there is a real world reference for that too, so I don't have to make up a flavor.
My one PC, because I've pretty much been a forever DM until recently, which thank you, friend. But my one PC that I've carried forward was a drow monk, and I did the research, like, okay, what do drow drink? And apparently, years ago when I read that up, it was dark ale that the alcohol content is so heavy it will kill your average human. So I had to figure out how to do that while, being an average human. But I found there was a brewery in Colorado, in Boulder, called Avery's, that made this beer called the Beast. And it was a dark chocolate and coffee stout. And let me tell you, it was fantastic.
I'm writing that one down. That one sounds delicious.
Yeah.
And also, its content was up there that would kill a normal human.
The perfect Valentine's Day gift. Right there.
My current enjoys a rusty nail.
Ooh. Class. Love that.
All right, so let's see. I don't even know how to say this person's name, so I'm just gonna call them Viper. Sorry. What is y'all's favorite character in your games that the story was most fun? I think the question is, what game was the most fun and that your favorite character was in?
I'm going to go to the Masks game we streamed last year. And Kirsten Mack, who's a streamer on here who played a character who was playing our Janice, our dual life type of teen hero. And her character, she really wanted her family to be involved. And a lot of her story was her parents not knowing that she was a superhero. And so her character's dads invited the team over for dinner, not knowing that they were all superheroes, just glad that their daughter had friends.
Aww.
And it made for just one of the most charming player experiences ever. And I love that character and her two dads, and they are all wonderful. And it was the most charming game ever, so them. She is the most fun.
It's clever. It's like as a forever DM, it's like asking me to pick a favorite child.
Right.
I think there's one that really stands out to me, and it's probably mainly because it's probably the most fully fleshed out one that we had before our game was put on hold, because that was a home game, and other games that are just kind of starting. But we had, long story short, there is from the theater table, let's say, they always give me really good, rich backstories. But one of them is a really adept writer, and she'll usually send me pages and pages and then apologize. And I'm like, no, thank you. I love reading this. So her situation basically kind of separated at birth, raised by clerics, has a memory of a past life including 2 siblings. And that just gave me tons of inspiration to build great things in there for her. And the first major arc they went on after the intro arc was her kind of traveling through Faerun, took place in the Forgotten Realms, to find her siblings. One of them had gone on to be a monk to train in the Great Glacier in the Hard North, and one of them was a kind of rambunctious, wayward, gifted child who had been passed around from merchants to caravans and ultimately made their way to Candlekeep to train. He was considered a wilder, so they basically shunned him, and he went off on his own sojourn. Long story short, scaled an ancient cliff, got trapped in a mirror. I forget what it's called, but a magic mirror, the one that has like the 6 chambers or whatever. And that kicked off this whole arc of her going to find her sister, teaming up with her. The sister became a pretty well ingrained part of the party, reclaim their homestead, and then go on this long search to find the brother, who nobody knew was entrapped in a mirror. So they would keep finding leads and the trail would go dead, finding leads and the trail would go dead. And through all of this, there is a demonic entity that's puppeteering the whole thing. And they, just before our game went on hiatus because of those real world inspirations, they had just defeated that adversary. That's probably one of my favorite arcs, mainly because it's one of the ones that we finished. I guess that's a big part of it too. But yeah, big one that stands out for me.
That's awesome. I had a pet NPC that I really loved for a long time because they started off a minor villain, and the party let them off and was like, "We can't trust you, so you need to follow us around for a bit until we decide you're cool to leave." And my wife's character was very like wanting to help him out because she was like, he's had it really rough. I don't like. He just needs a chance. And so he followed them around, and then a year and a half later, they were at this mage college and happened to be there for the graduation. And they saw him there graduating and finishing the mage's college. And they were all just so pleased. And I remember that character because of how happy they were. They're like, Quintus is a good guy now.
I think one of the most memorable for me, this was a game that I ran way back in early high school. And this character, she didn't have a lot of backstory. She didn't have a lot going for her, but she stands out in my mind so much because of the player. We had been playing D&D with this group for years, and we played at one friend's house who his younger sister always make fun of us for playing because it was back when D&D wasn't cool. What happened, guys? And would always make fun of us, and every time we'd come back, like, oh, you're doing that thing again, fine, and she left, and we had a massive blizzard one year, and we ended up getting snowed in at his house and played for 2 days straight. It was amazing. And she was stuck there as well, so of course started off, oh, you're playing that stupid game again, fine. And at one point she comes down and sits in the kitchen and listens, and then scooches a little forward and listens more intently, eventually sits at the table just watching everything. And by the end of that, she came up to me afterwards and said, hey, can I play with you guys? And so we made this rogue character for her, and she was this person who was coming into a brand new world, and the NPC that befriended her was this gentleman by the name of Hollow. And he was, I can't give too many details because this is actually part of a story that I might be doing on our channel here at some point. But he had an incredibly powerful weapon that he ended up giving her to let her be more of a standalone figure in this brave new world that she was stepping into. And it mirroring her stepping into this whole world as a person that she'd been making fun of for so many years. And it holds such a dear place in my heart because she was kind of in the bad crowd at school. She was really young and already was smoking like a chimney at 13, 14. And to spend time with us and play this game that she'd been making fun of, she broke many of her bad habits, and it was just really heartwarming to see what this did for her.
That's awesome.
That's so
That's
cool.
awesome. Transcends the character. That's great.
Yeah.
I guess my, I mean, one of the most fully fleshed out characters that I've ever been allowed to play, was this himbo barbarian named Vorik, and he just like, we were playing a Curse of Strahd campaign, and I mean, he just, I don't know, it's really fun to be the big dumb guy who just gets to like swagger around and try with all his might to do the right thing. But in that world, it's just everything is gray. Is just shades of gray, right? So he's just always trying to do the right thing. I had a really good time playing him though. He was a lot of fun.
I really enjoy playing the edgy, kind of darker, gloomy trope for characters, and so one of my favorite PCs has come onto our regular campaign when we switched up DMs, and I kind of really enjoyed being able to play the real asshole of the group, and that was kind of different, especially for me being the DM, where I'm always kind of like, yes, you can always do this, and try to be as at making everybody feel as comfortable, and then to have me sit there as a player and be like backhanding all the players verbally and saying, you know what, you're not really that good at this, like I'll just take over for you, or just kind of being just that real a-hole was kind of funny, and then being a mystery and an enigma that they had to discover through our campaign was pretty fun.
I can't play that guy as a player. I can as a GM, but as a player, I'm that guy who had to restart Mass Effect because I was accidentally mean to a squad mate.
It was interesting to see the players' reactions. Like, do we really like this guy? Do we like this character? I don't know, but our regular DM is playing the player, so I guess we'll be okay to him.
That brings up
Gives you a little insulation, yeah.
Yeah.
Like that brings up a really challenging issue that I've run into recently with the whole there being certain characters that the rest of the party goes, why are we adventuring with this person? Or even that character going, why am I adventuring with these people? And we almost had a player switch entirely, go, well, we're retiring this character because there's no point to them being here anymore. So it's odd how sometimes you can build this character to have a personality, but meshing with the group in one way or another, as long as they have the hook of they should be together, I think is important to find.
That's a really important thing. I find that's why I find session zeros to be so helpful with that, and I love that Powered by the Apocalypse games kind of set that up at the beginning by having everybody like connect themselves through some sort of bond or some sort of story link. That way the group, even if they're not best friends, they have a reason to sort of work together at the beginning, or they have something that connects them at the beginning.
Yeah, the first player that I played was for a Curse of Strahd campaign, and I played a Dragonborn monk, and he really had no ties to Barovia or anything going on with the other players, and was just kind of this, hey, we gotta follow the rules, we gotta follow what's going on and try to take care of people as best as we can. And it did not mesh with the group at all, and so I ended up having to retire him because there was just no symbiosis with the other players, and we didn't really go through that process when we were creating our characters for that very first session.
And sometimes that's the right answer. I mean, you can mesh any character in, but I've definitely had times where I was like, this person has reached their goal. It's time for them to go off and do something else, and I'm gonna make a new character.
Yeah. And in some cases, it's just being like a considerate player to realize that like there's not you know, that this person is like this character that I'm playing might be like there is no place, and it's doing nothing but serving to upset the balance, and being able to sort of step back and find something else.
And if that character doesn't care, it is a slippery slope to then suddenly the player no longer caring.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and usually it's a foil of some kind like that, right? So I'm with you, John, on that. Like, absolutely being a session zero conversation. And
Yeah.
personally, I've tackled that like right off the bat. You know, the only thing that could even be considered remotely railroady is that you have to be willing to go on an adventure, and you have to be willing to work together. There are ways, if I have really like experienced players who want to play like an evil character, then they need to justify how they exist in that kind of economy, or sphere, or ecosystem rather is a better word, without like upsetting the player experience. Because the minute it crosses that line and people's player experiences are even worse, like friendships and relationships are being tested, then it doesn't go, right? It doesn't go. And beyond that, if we cover all that and we check all those boxes and sign on the dotted line, and it still starts to get awry in the game, then I think about how I as a world am going to deal with that. Like, how does the world react to somebody like that? And usually it's like, you're either going to turn it around as a player, or I'm going to turn it around as a world.
In your own game group culture, are short form characters in games like that common, or is it more of like a long form, like we're in it for this game that's going to last a very long time, or is it more shorter games?
I stick to shorter games.
Yeah, it goes either way for me. I've played in campaigns where they last 2 years. I've played in one-shots and, you know, mini arcs that last 4 to 10 sessions. So it just kind of all depends. You just have to be aware with your GM and your players, how long is this campaign going to last, so that I can like make preparations for my character. Because if you're going to start at level 5 of a character and have all these plans for this particular character to get to 15, it's never going to get there. You as a player are going to be disappointed.
Yeah.
So
I try to set that up front, like, hey, I have an idea for a game that might run like 8 sessions or something like that, and then just kind of give everybody like let everybody know what the commitment level is to it, and then like and then how long I expect it to go. And I think that kind of primes everybody too to be like, okay, well, if we have an arc by session 8, we need to like start closing it, you know. And I found that to be pretty useful.
That's interesting. I guess I completely took for granted that I always plan a campaign to just be open-ended. It's kind of running until it finishes, and I've never, unless it's like specifically a one-shot or like I think, as you mentioned, Scott, like if it's a seasonal type thing that we're doing, or seasonally inspired one-shot or short campaign. But almost always, even when one time I tried to plan a short campaign, I was like, this will probably take 3 to 4 sessions, and it was like 9 sessions.
Yeah.
So, that's a really good point, because I'm not tooled to think about things short term that way, right? Like if somebody is kind of a little bit more against the grain, can we let it slide? I mean, not barring the player experience items that I mentioned, but I would just say, like, if I read my table and I find that they just need kind of an outlet, or I get that if a player is doing something that's against the character type they've built, I'll have a conversation with that player.
Yeah.
And if it turns out that they just need an outlet, they just want to play an RPG where they can just go bonkers, then I might say, okay, you know what, let's pause this and let's do three sessions of like a specialty campaign where you're all evil. And I don't mean like you walk into town, you blow the place up, but let's be intelligently evil, even if it's chaotically intelligently evil.
That's such an important distinction. Yeah.
Yeah, and just like let's build it, and let's give you guys the outlet where you can be evil and then come back to this, right? Because you'll rarely get one or the other. And players who know that they're investing in a character for the long term are probably more inclined to listen to your input if you feel like they're, counterculture to the table too, right? Because they want that character to be around. They don't want to.
Yeah, that evil character thing is so, like, it's so interesting, because you do have the I think the default idea is like, oh, okay, we just kill everybody we meet all the time, and then eventually we'll kill each other because we'll run out of people to kill. So I mean, we've my group on our channel has successfully run a fairly evil campaign. Like, but they all work as a team, and they're not like they're evil in the sense that they just want to get paid for a job, and they're willing to take on jobs that are a little less glossy than the norm. They handle assassinations and robberies and stuff like that. So they're evil. And then what actually happened was they found themselves veering on one branch of the campaign. They found themselves veering too close to being good guys, and they had to like veer back to set themselves back on a more like selfish path almost, because they met an NPC who they really wanted to help. And then they were like, all right, well, we gotta create some separation. We're starting to like this character, this NPC too much. let's go steal some stuff, like, you know. But it really worked out, like, because they're cohesive and they think long term. I think, like, they're like, okay, well, if we kill this guy, then we can't use him as a resource later on. It'd be better to not kill this guy and use him as a resource later on. You know, stuff like that.
All right. So we're gonna move on to another question. Let's see. So Fork Puff had another question. What is you guys' favorite character / story trope in games, movies, TV? Up to you.
I think I already touched on this a little bit, but mine is the edgy, dark, tragic backstory it's just my favorite.
Tends to be the characters that we play, right? Like,
Yeah.
mine's the big himbo, like big dumb himbo, like trying to do the right thing. like I love Thor, right? Like I love Thor from the Marvel universe.
Yeah.
I always love a good redemption arc, man.
Ooh, yeah.
I think if it's one of the things that I find myself doing, I try to be anti-trope, even like not play against it, but it's unavoidable to a certain extent. I think
Doesn't that become a trope in and of itself?
Yeah, it's true. Now, like, the trope is you have a good upbringing, your parents are well off, they're both still around and heavily involved in your life.
Yeah.
You spend Sunday
Right.
there, you know, watching ye old Netflix. And now that's the trope. So I'm waiting for it to completely flip, where somebody comes in and is like, yeah, I'm an orphan. Both my parents were murdered by goblins. Like, oh, that's clever. That's a good one. It's fun. It's something
Haven't heard that
different.
one in a
Yeah,
while.
finally something original.
But I do like to make NPC, like, I do like that kind of vindictive NPC that was slighted, or that henchman that kind of got away and became something more than just like a yappy, you know, dog kind of thing. I do tend to do that a lot. Ye old Netflix trademark.
Yeah, I'm totally keeping that one.
Yeah, ye old Netflix and chilleth.
Ye old Netflix.
Roll persuasion. I'll give you advantage.
But I'm the same. That was what I was gonna say. Is all my characters have parents, but on top of that, my players like to adopt every NPC they find.
Yeah.
And if I give them a home base, it will be full of children and out of work people.
Yeah.
And all of you come stay with us. We can give you a job. It'll be great. We'll teach you to be a wizard. Every child they find that's not accounted for, they're like, come with us, we'll teach you magic. And now I have a bunch of 12-year-olds in a castle that know basic cantrips, because the wizard's like, I now have a wizard school because I can't say no to these cans.
No,
Whether
what
you
if they
want
then
that.
became like a child gang then?
We also have a dog, a Nimblewright, and a fairy dragon for some reason.
I mean, it sounds like a healthy stable of backup characters to me. So
Yeah.
I'm waiting for my current character to just start adopting every stray cat on the street. Like, she's a ranger, so it would totally make sense. But yeah, we had two characters who, for various reasons, left the stream, and we picked up two more. And so, as such, one of the characters had managed to adopt, for lack of a better word, two piglets. And so my character has taken over custody of these two piglets that are probably like full-grown pigs at this point. Not really. We've only been in the town for like 4 days in actual town time. But So I'm like, yeah, sooner or later it's going to be like the stray dog and the cat and somebody's trying to get rid of their hamster, and I guarantee she's going to be the one that's going to pick all of them up.
Love it. I also like to build characters that like adventuring. Like, it's never like I have the burden of responsibility and power, like I have to do this and I'm tortured by it. My guys are like, that we get to go see a dragon? we're going to the what wild?
You know,
yes!
that kind of brings up a point to me where it was explained to me in a podcast that I listened to probably a couple years ago that adventurers in this world seem to be a little bit more on the insane side. Like they are putting their lives on the line daily, if not weekly. And what kind of person would actually do that and enjoy going out, risking their lives for that every day or every adventure? It just seems like that insane person. But
I think of the David Tennant or Matt Smith versions of the Doctor. We're just like, oh, this thing that's happening is really bad, but it's also so cool.
Well, and to touch on your point, Tony, it speaks to the exceptionalism of the character in that world, right? So because they are the stars of the show, they're the exception to the setting, right? Like,
yeah, they're the heroes.
Exceptional, insane.
It's why sanity isn't on the original character sheet.
Right.
That's right.
Apache's over here with the threats in the chat.
I know, right?
And Luna, if I could commandeer the question,
yeah, absolutely.
I would love to talk to Scott about his interactive D&D and how he does it and how that works on his channel.
Yeah.
And then what everybody else kind of thinks about that sort of thing, or if they've seen it, or if they've tried it, or what system do you use, Scott, for to redeem for redemptions and to redeem things for the players?
We actually recently changed it. We used to use channel points that we just refer to as inspiration points, and for that you could redeem things like what we have is giving the players an adrenaline surge, which isn't giving you advantage, it's allowing you to re-roll one d20. So that way it can stack on top of advantage. Sabotaging an opponent so that they're at disadvantage, casting Mass Healing Word on the party, and then one of the very popular ones is spinning the Wheel of Chaos, which is literally a spinning wheel that has everything from the classic cast Fireball on this person to these characters have to swap accents. Like you talk as the other person.
Yes.
So there's good things, there's bad things, but then there's also just silly things.
Right.
But recently we actually switched over and we use the extension Streamloots, which if any of you are familiar with this, it's a thing that you can do on Twitch that people buy essentially packs of cards, and then they can play that card on your stream. And so we have, I want to say, upwards of 40 different cards that give the audience ways of interacting. And those are all beneficial, or you can destroy them to get points towards crafting other cards. But it's added almost a trading card game aspect to the show.
Yeah, I saw that. I was so intrigued by that because I when I peeked in on your channel, I saw that the loot card things, and I was like, I've never heard of this, so I didn't know what it was and how it worked.
It's a very popular thing that streamers do for hey, force me to plan a 12-hour stream. But we looked at it and went, hey, you know what we could do? And then we found out you can customize the cards as much as you want. So, haha, it worked.
That's awesome. Yeah,
that's really cool.
The big thing I will say is it is a balancing act. When we introduced it, it broke. The game broke.
Yeah, I was curious about how you dealt with that too, because it definitely messes the game as it is up.
And the other thing I want to say on that is the only thing that we do that on is the show that we call The Gauntlet, which is a rotating cast of characters that are going through to fight every single monster.
Right.
It is not a campaign. It is not a story. And personally, I would never do that for a story that players would be invested in, because you're taking away so much agency. If you hand any of it over to the audience,
Right.
I mean, there's already so much luck involved, and things can go even worse. But in the Gauntlet, it's fine because death is inevitable. The players don't get a long rest. They go until they die, and then they respawn at a sanctuary, and then continuously progress forward. So it's okay if they die. But I have seen some shows that do audience interaction, and you can spend bits to give things to players. And I do think the ability to tip bits to a channel to do it does help in such a way, and because all of us as artists doing any sort of show, there is that level of, hey, we're giving you free entertainment, but then adding some things into there that people refer to it as pay artists for their work. If you want to have that much agency over a show, then you need to pay for it.
Right.
But
so you're saying that when it comes to like a more narrative campaign, like
Exactly.
interacting with a more narrative campaign. Yeah, I think you're right on that, but and I've just found that the points don't work with a narrative campaign. Like they just it's too upsetting, right? Because you just never know what'll happen. But I have found that because what we started doing was we're running classic dungeons now. Like right now we're running Hidden Shrine of Tomokan, and which is just like an old classic dungeon. And how we're doing it is each week there's a different group of players, and then wherever they leave off the next week, the next group of players come in and they start off where they were. And the dungeon stays, like the dungeon, whatever the previous players did in the dungeon stays, but they're new characters, and we just kind of swap them in. We just don't talk about the paradox or anything like that. So, and then like if there were magic items redeemed in the last time, those just go away and they just start fresh, but they're in the same dungeon. And so, because what I found was it's kind of punishing to play without any progression, I guess. Like I think you have a pretty cool setup where you're fighting every monster in the book. So like there's a sense of progression that like we've collectively killed this many monsters. Because the way we were doing it before, we would just run small dungeons and then we would just start them over every time, and losing that sense of progression. Because when you play like that, there's no XP, there's no real gold to get, there's no leveling really. But having that sense of progression, I feel like has really helped help it be a little bit more satisfying for the players, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. I think taking this also and applying it to any DMing, we've got all these rules at our disposal to use, but I think the first and foremost rule is, are your players having fun? You're doing this, you are part of a shared experience, whether you're telling a story or just having massive combat. If your players are having a great time, you're doing it right. And so with shows that have that audience interaction bit, I know with us, I have sat down to all of the players that are a part of it and said, hey, we're going to try this. How do you feel about it? Would you be open to this? And when we've had things, it's like, okay, so that didn't work. We actually had one, when we introduced the cards, we had cards that could do bad things, and it's like, you can do bad things to the monsters, but also the players.
Yeah.
And I put that in thinking, well, our audience is typically very like friendly and fun. They'll throw it down occasionally.
No, they're demons. They're demons. They're absolutely demonic.
We had a couple of people that night come in and just throw all of these negative things on one player, and I could tell the fun broke instantly.
Right.
And I had to take the time to say, okay, everyone, I'm turning these off. There are no more redemptions tonight. We are going to keep doing this. Clearly, it needs fixing. Thank you for being a part of this, but we're going to continue on normally without that. We've gotten it to a place that we're still tweaking it. We tell our folks that, hey, welcome to the early access of this this event. But
like you said, it's a balancing act. It really is at this point, especially when you're balancing the players' fun versus the viewers' fun, and you want everybody to have fun ideally. But like when you have a redemption system like that, it is totally possible for them to gang up on, on one player. And so I definitely, anybody who comes onto the stream, because we have open recruitment where people can just sign up and play. But I try to warn people when they come in. It's like, this could happen, and that's the game tonight. Is it's not a traditional D&D where you're like gonna make it through this dungeon. It's how are you gonna handle all these obstacles being thrown at you.
As it was said earlier, sometimes players need that evil campaign,
But yeah, I think it's really fantastic that there's somebody else out there doing that. Has anybody else like messed with the like redemptions for games on stream or anything like that?
I have, and I usually keep it to things that are mechanically inconsequential, so that I prefer them to put work on me to the players. So it'll typically be things like give me a name for a future villain. Is one that I do, and so someone will put that and put like Captain Obvious, and I'll be like, okay, cool. Next time we do masks or mutants and masterminds, I'll have a minor villain called Captain Obvious, and it's a good little writing exercise for me to work with whatever in the world they give me. I always put the caveat that if it's something unworkable, that I reserve the right to be like, okay, give me something different.
Right.
And I have done in the past. You can give the players a bardic inspiration die, which felt like a not huge, or give me a bardic inspiration die to use with NPCs or against them, and that way it's still me kind of controlling the flow of, rather than like this person gets -2, I can be like, okay, I have an inspiration die to use against the players when it's appropriate.
I've looked in, and absolutely, I think like Casey mentioned, where I've seen it work really well in more longer term campaigns is that if it's like a slight edge, or like I said, mechanically inconsequential is a perfect term for it, I think. Or like Scott said, if you just accept that, like, hey, we do this for a certain type of game, or it has to be that type of game, but it doesn't interrupt like the really invested, fleshed out campaigns. I've always found I don't do a lot of actual play, and it's a bit of a sticking point for me because we just wrapped up the only one that I did. And when I started with Twitch like 5 years ago, I was map making, and then I started doing like a live in-person game at a time where not a lot of people were doing it, and it was great. It was awesome, but I found like as a DM to run the world, stay invested in my players the way that they're invested in the game, and manage the tech of a stream and the engagement, it was just too much. And what I found had a tendency to suffer more than anything was the game, and I didn't feel like that was fair, so I stopped streaming it. Because I've always, like, you have to at least always remember, and I commend you for this, Scott, in what you just described, is it has to be like the player experience first. And we all love our viewers, we love our communities, but the stream has to be second in that kind of scenario, unless it is it's announced to be an interactive thing. Like, this is an interactive thing, right? Because the players deserve your attention too, and the game deserves your attention, something you're all working on together, rather than it being like a person's stream, because you don't ever want to give your players the impression that they matter less, and you also don't want to give your viewers the impression that they matter less, which puts you in an already tricky situation as a streamer. But then to be a DM on top of that, or GM on top of that, I personally found it was too much for me. So we started playing with like stream loot, on our like our gaming streams, our video game streams and stuff like that, where we can do kind of funny things, especially with, I have the luxury of a partner in it. We can do fun things like that. But yeah, that's my position with it too. If you have a specific type of game where viewers can influence and keep that separate from your narrative, like Scott, I think you've balanced that perfectly, and I commend you for stepping in on that player's behalf too, because that. The woke version of GMing is being able to read the table at that level and know when somebody needs your help without them having to ask, because most of the time they won't ask, right?
Yeah.
And I think that brings up a really good point. Something you said is, like, we have to think about the players thing, especially about the players' enjoyment, but also just feeling comfortable being at what is still a table, even if it's a virtual one. And while I have as a streamer, I have and a producer, frankly, in this sense, because it's what we're doing. Like, yes, I want my audience to have a good time and to enjoy the show, but before that, the people that have trusted me to sit around a virtual table and play a game that involves often a lot of like openness and a certain amount of vulnerability, like that comes first.
Well, this goes into the world of, I know there's a couple of actors here in the group that, I mean, it's the reason that sets are closed and rehearsals are closed.
Mm-hmm.
When you are performing, you are vulnerable. You are presenting truth. You're presenting yourself. Even if it's a character, you put so much of yourself into that character to bring them to life. And if you're at a place where you don't feel comfortable being there, there's no way that you can fully commit to being a good character. And if you can't do that, well then why is this being streamed at all?
Mm-hmm. I've been in a few plays where the producer felt like it was their prerogative to invite friends and just people to rehearsals and a little more regularly than is good. And I've straight up had to be like, look, I can't.
I know we're talking a lot about players at the table, but I also want to bring up the point that our players having fun is very important, but we as DMs, we also need to be having fun. Everybody at the table needs to have fun. Right. If we're not passionate about what we're doing and we're not having fun, our players aren't going to have fun, our audiences aren't going to have fun, you know, so having that self-care for ourselves to not get that burnout and not get overwhelmed is so important as DMs ourselves and to other DMs out there.
Absolutely. We're players too. Yeah.
Yep, GMs are players too. That's our affirmation.
No, you're right. And you know what? I hear GMs saying it more than anyone else, right? So, and we'll keep saying it until we start hearing it back, you know. But yeah, you're absolutely right. And the burnout is real. The emotional investment is real. Like, think about how much time you spend investing in that character you're playing. Most GMs that I know, and I'm certain everyone here and most of you in chat who are GMs as well, put that amount of investment into the hundreds of people that we play too, right? So that's all part of it. That's all important. Yeah, great point.
Totally is. And actually, that's a very nice point for us to end on. So we have just gotten to about 5 minutes before our end time, and I like to make sure everybody gets a chance to go around and just remind chat where they can find you on social media and the interwebs and all of that good stuff. And if you have anything you want to promote, or fundraisers, or new streams or anything like that, this is a great chance to get to do that. So I am going to go in the reverse order from when we started. So I'm going to start with Tony this time.
All right. My name is Tony, and I'm part of the Make It Playable team. You can find us on Twitter at MIPlayable. You can also find us on Twitch at MIPlayable. And then we do our character building podcast on all of the main podcasting places, and we just build Dungeons and Dragons characters. One thing that I do want to plug is there is a pro bono event that I'm part of the week of March 28th through April 4th at Chaotic Lawful. You can find them at Chaotic Lawful Inc. I'm doing some of the graphics for their week-long stream. So you can follow all of the great games that are gonna be coming out for them during that week.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much for coming to hang out with us tonight. I really appreciate it, and hopefully we can have you back again sometime in the future. So
absolutely.
Excellent. Casey.
Hello. Real quick, definitely check out that thing with Chaotic Lawful. I got to spend some time with them last night on What Streams May Come over on Chaotic Tiefling Atlanta, and Chaotic Lawful is amazing, and please check that out. But I'm Casey Williams, the Adjunct GM. You can find me on Twitter at KCT931, and everywhere else, YouTube, Twitch, all that stuff, at the Adjunct GM. I do live plays every Friday for Friday Night Playtest, where we try out different TTRPG systems that usually we've never played before, and you can learn them with us. Every other Saturday, I do an interview show called Cover to Cover, which has been on break, but I'm looking for guests again. So if anyone's interested, feel free to reach out. I'd love to have you. I also forgot to mention earlier that I am a Twitch ambassador for Jasper's Game Day, which is a nonprofit organization which raises money for mental health and suicide awareness, especially with teens and young adults, which is a super good cause, and they're a super good group. So check them out at jaspersgameday.com and the same name on Twitter.
Yes, they are awesome. Very, very great folk over there. So, and if you're like me and you're a dice addict, you can also get Jasper's Game Day dice from Die Hard Dice.
They're gorgeous.
They really
How
are.
did we go a whole show without talking about dice?
That's it. We got to do it again.
'Cause we've all been playing on the internet for the last year.
And yet my dice collection has still grown over the last year. I was just mulling this over with a friend of mine last night. I'm like, I've accrued like 5 sets of dice in the last year. I haven't played at a table in a year and a half. Like,
Exactly,
Yeah, how
but
does
they're
that
now a
happen?
symbol of hope.
I'm really fighting this Kickstarter for the LED dice. that
oh my
hook up
gosh, I
people.
know.
I wasn't going to get them, but now that I see they work with Roll20, so I can use physical
Right.
dice. Virtual.
Yep.
Oh,
That's crazy.
all right. So we will go over to Scott next.
All right, I am Scott Leslie. I am the Dungeon Master Storyteller over at the AdventurersPack. If you want to come on by and throw some of those cards into the gauntlet and really mess around with our players, you can find us at twitch.tv/AdventurersPack. We also do miniature painting. We do some cartography. Really, we're just a group of friends sharing what we love on the internet, and would love to have you drop by.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much for coming over. We'll have to have you back again so we can discuss dice. We'll do a
gosh,
whole
yeah.
episode on dice. That's it'll to make up for it. So
Well, thank you again for having me. This has just been an absolute pleasure.
great. Oh, well, I'd love to have you back again in the future. John.
Yeah, you can check us out at the at twitch.tv/theactionsturge. Yeah, they're gonna post a whole list of links there. You can check out our YouTube. If you're interested in joining one of our Wednesday night games, pop in the Discord, pop into the recruitment channel, and just say, hey, I'm interested, and we'll get in touch with you. We won't have a game this week because we're on vacation, but next week we'll start back up again, and that's Wednesdays at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Yeah, and thank you so much for having me on. I really, really appreciate this. It's always a good thing to be able to talk to other GMs and
It is,
content
yes.
creators. And,
It absolutely is, and it was great to have you on. I know we've been running in the same circle for a while now, so it's
Yes.
it's nice to actually get to sit down and chat.
Absolutely.
And BazNBigly.
Thank you. Yeah, that circle always comes around at some point. It'll wrap around all of us eventually. Thanks, Luna, of course, and the whole Shared Experience crew. It's a real pleasure to be here under the new flag, and for welcoming me in this great group of this brain trust of narrative artists here. So I'm honored to be part of that. I'm Baz, one half of BazNBigly. My wife and I that's Steph Bigley. We play co-op games, a couple gaming experiences, and we love to interact with chat. We also have the Friday morning show, the BazNBigly Morning Show, which is lighthearted news, funny shit on the internet, nerdy things, basically anything you can't see on the evening news. That's just designed for fun and positivity. But every Wednesday night is D&D night, so catch me on the D&D Mega Stream, where I talk about map making, narrative building, basically all the prep and the nuts and bolts that go into making great adventures.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for coming back. I know we've been trying for a while to get you to come back on, and schedules finally lined up, so I'm glad it worked out. Excellent. And this is the Shared Experience channel. We are here every Sunday night at 8 p.m. Eastern with Tales from the Tavern, where we bring in a different group of people every week to do exactly this, answer questions from chat and have great conversations around TTRPGs and all things nerdy. Tuesday nights you can catch our, I almost said it was our 50 Shades of Crimson. Nope, it's our Ripples in the Gray stream. That is our Star Wars Edge of the Empire game that we have a great time with that. That's still fairly early on, so it's a great time to get in and catch that one. And then Wednesday nights, also at 8 p.m. Eastern, is our 50 Shades of Crimson, which is our Pathfinder first edition. We just finished our first season this past Wednesday, so we're going to have there will be a little bit of a break. We're probably going to do like a wrap-up episode, like a Q&A with the cast, and then we'll take a week off, and then we'll be back with that. So come back and hang out with us. We are going to go raid a guy who's live. This was a recommendation from somebody in chat, and happens to be the creator of the 10 Candles system, for anybody who's heard of that. So they are a brand new streamer. They haven't even made affiliate yet, so let's go over there and show them some love and drop follows and help share the experience, if you will. So have a great night, everybody, and we will see you all again soon.